President Biden is in Israel today, pledging U.S. support for the Jewish state. Many Israelis are concerned that behind the scenes, the president is trying to thwart Israel's plan to destroy Hamas.
Earlier this morning, the president said he's seen evidence that Israel did not bomb a hospital in Gaza. Yet Hamas continues to point the finger at Israel, fueling outrage throughout the Arab world. Chris Mitchell reports.
Upon his arrival, President Biden reiterated his commitment to Israel.
Israel, as they respond to these attacks, it seems to me that have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs.
But above all, Mr. President, the world sees that support and the moral clarity that you have demonstrated from the moment Israel was attacked. You've rightly drawn a clear line between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarism. You described what Hamas did as sheer evil. It is exactly that.
Yet Josh Reinstein, president of the Israel Allies Foundation, told CBN News many Israelis are concerned about Biden's visit.
I think people are worried it's a double-edged sword. You know, we're seeing that the sanctions on Iran are being lifted as we speak on ballistic missiles. We're seeing that the American administration is not pointing the finger at Iran, even though we know that Hamas and Hezbollah is their proxy armies and they fund them, they equip them, they train them. So people are worried to see what's going to happen.
Carolyn Glick from the Jewish News Syndicate reported U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued a warning to Israel's war cabinet.
Tony Blinken was threatening withholding American war material from Israel that we need, specifically things like bunker buster bombs and other things, including artillery shells. And unless Israel provides humanitarian aid.
Glick points out all humanitarian aid in Gaza goes into the hands of Hamas. The UN group UNRWA tweeted recently that Hamas stole food and fuel from their compound. CBN News reached out to the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem for a response to Glick's reporting, but has yet to receive a reply. A major part of the president's trip was canceled after Hamas accused Israel of striking a hospital in Gaza. Jordan's foreign minister canceled the meeting between President Biden, Jordan's King Abdullah, Egyptian President El-Sisi, and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. Demonstrators in Istanbul, Jordan, Hebron, and others protested what they called a massacre by the IDF. The IDF presenting evidence, it says, shows a failed rocket launch by the Islamic Jihad.
Intelligence from few sources that we have in our hands indicates that the Islamic Jihad is responsible for the failed rocket launch which hit the hospital in Gaza. I repeat, this is the responsibility of Islamic Jihad that killed innocents in the hospital in Gaza.
The IDF showed video of the failed launch and a recording between Hamas and Islamic Jihad admitting the failed launch. This video shows the damage done to the parking lot next to the hospital, which military experts say resembles a rocket strike, not a bomb, which leaves a crater. The IDF also says Hamas is inflating the number of dead. And President Biden also reiterated Israel did not bomb the hospital. Israel's defenders say the hospital is now part of a propaganda campaign waged by Hamas in the international media. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Ambassador David Friedman is joining us now. He's the former U.S. ambassador to Israel. So thank you so much for being with us again. And give us your insight on where we stand right now. What are you expecting President Biden to do in Israel today?
Well, thanks, Gordon, for having me. And I think that the president came largely for the reasons he said. He wanted to show America's unqualified support for Israel, and I think he wanted to show the world that America stands with Israel. And I think he was helpful in reiterating the obvious that Israel did not destroy a hospital in Gaza. So I think those were his purposes. But, you know, the question that everybody's concerned about, and I thought the reporting that I just heard was excellent in this regard. You know, what's going to happen when Israel begins to really take the steps necessary to root out Hamas. Now, the president has said that he wants Israel to root out Hamas. Hamas is worthy of annihilation. But, it's not like everybody in the Gaza Strip is raising their hand and saying, I'm Hamas, come and kill me. It's a complicated effort. And in any war, there are, civilian casualties. And, when the president speaks, he makes these cryptic references to civilian casualties. And no one really knows what he means, because in any war, in a war that is prosecuted with the most moral, the most sensitive, the most surgically, surgical armies, there still are civilian casualties. And in Gaza, especially, I think we use the term civilian, charitably. 80% of the Gazan population despises Israel. They cheered when all these atrocities were shown on social media. They are the most anti-Semitic people on earth, and they provide aid and comfort and safe passage and a place to hide for all the terrorists. So some of them, as this process goes forward, are going to lose their lives. Now, someone takes a picture, puts it on the internet, puts it on the 24/7 news cycle. It gets into the social media of Rashida Tlaib or AOC or Ilhan Omar, one of the squad, who have already been falsely accusing Israel of all kinds of war crimes that they haven't committed. And then you really see where the rubber hits the road. What will the president do then? As the pressure mounts from the left within his base, what does he do? Because Israel has to win this war. They have no choice. If Israel cannot annihilate and eradicate Hamas, the ultimate conclusion from that is that Hamas will come back bigger and stronger. They will declare victory, and ultimately the message is that Israel cannot defend its citizens from further atrocities, and we can't have that. So the answer to your question is we'll give them a good grade coming today. A very good grade. It was a very strong show of support to fly halfway around the world to be in Israel today. But the question is he building capital with the Israelis to then spend in a way which forces Israel prematurely to end this battle? And we don't know right now.
Well, you and dozens of other religious leaders, both Jewish and Christian, signed a public letter calling on President Biden to take stronger action on behalf of Israel. So what more are you looking for?
I think primarily is to make it clear to Israel that it will have the space, the time, and the resources to complete this battle, this war against Hamas. That's still an open issue, as I was alluding to earlier. Look, this war could take a month. It could take 2-3 months. It's complicated. It's urban warfare. This area is heavily booby-trapped. Many of the terrorists embed, with civilians. It's just very complicated. And, Israel is going to do what it has to do to protect its citizens. It has no choice. But if it ends this war too early because of pressure from America, I think we're handing Hamas, all the forces of evil, all the terrorists around the world, an enormous victory. And I think it will come back to haunt us in America as well as in Israel.
Let's talk about the diplomatic impact of all of this. It seems Hamas was very intentional in targeting civilians, very intentional in using rape as a method of warfare, taking hostages, killing children. All of that seems to be spelled out as part of what they were doing. And they called it the Al-Aqsa flood, and they were trying to say something that you were the architect of, the Abraham Accords, that they were worried Saudi Arabia was going to come to peace and recognize Israel and have diplomatic relations with Israel. Was their end game all along to be so horrific they would force Israel to invade Gaza and in that put an end to the Abraham Accords?
It could very well be, because their actions are being dictated by Iran. And I think Iran was feeling extremely uncomfortable with the idea that Israel and Saudi Arabia could normalize. I think that would ultimately lead to virtually the entire Arab world, along with Israel, aligned against Iran. And I think that very much could be the reason why Iran, whose fingerprints are all over this, are now directing Hamas, and to some extent Hezbollah as well, which has opened up a front along the north to fight Israel and to put Israel in a position where Israel is no longer popular within the Arab world. You have to understand that while Israel has peace treaties with Jordan and Egypt, for example, neither of those countries has done anything to really prepare the citizenry of these two countries to engage with Israel. That's why these are referred to as cold peace. Israel in Egypt and Israel in Jordan. Very different than the United Arab Emirates, the things that we did. We actually, I think, built something that's based, much more on people getting to know each other and learning to like each other. But Israel's borders are, even those countries with whom they're at peace, these streets are exploding right now. Because, as they say, a lie goes halfway around the world before the truth even puts on its shoes, right? And this hospital attack, was everywhere, everywhere in the Arab street, that Israel bombed the hospital and killed 500 people, before the truth came out that Islamic Jihad, shot a rocket into a hospital parking lot and killed far fewer people. So the streets are inflamed all around the world. And when that happens, none of these governments are bold enough to move forward with peace initiatives until things die down. I do believe that when this dies down, and God willing, it will be soon, I believe that Saudi Arabia and Israel still have enough in common to start revisiting the idea of normalization. But it's certainly been set back, and I think at the behest of Iran.
Do you think there's a military goal here as well? It looks like they're achieving the diplomatic goal. The Arab world is now united against Israel in ways I haven't seen for decades. Iran and Saudi Arabia had a diplomatic consultation just yesterday, so it's brought them together. And so you look at this, is there a military thing here too? Are they expecting the IDF to get bogged down in a urban warfare situation in Gaza, and then Hezbollah will then attack from the north?
Well, that's certainly something that we're concerned about, and I think the government of Israel is taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen. Look, I think what happened here, in part, was these countries and these terror groups saw Israel very divided. As you know, over the past 12 months, there have been protests every Saturday night against the government. There have been, there's been real acrimony within the citizenship of Israel, even to the point where people in the army and the reserves were saying, we're not going to serve this government. And I think that sent a very dangerous message to Israel's enemies. The reality is that after this horrific set of atrocities were committed by Hamas, the entire country is united. I mean, literally everyone. When Israel called up 300,000 reserves, which was the largest call up in its history, 350,000 soldiers showed up. I mean, just to give you a sense of where the country is. People are, normally when there's a war, people are, flocking to the airport to leave, and the planes going out are full. This time, the planes going out were relatively empty, and the planes coming back were full of Israelis who were, living outside the country, coming back to serve. So if this thing has demonstrated, one major miscalculation in the Arab world is the idea that Israel would be sufficiently divided where they could be weakened. Israel is very strong right now. The country's of one mind. The soldiers have been properly allocated to all the different fronts. It's not just Gaza. It's not just the north. It's also in Judea and Samaria, where there's no protective fence, and where there's been a great amount of hostility. Last night in Hebron, there were riots reminiscent of the Hebron riots of 1929. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on around the country, but I believe the IDF is up to the task, and more importantly, I believe the people of Israel are up to the task to collectively close ranks and protect their country.
What can we do here in America to stand with Israel? It seems to be the most trying time in my lifetime since 1973. What can we do?
Well, look, I think, it may sound trite, but Israel deeply, deeply appreciates American support. The morale here is critical. I think what's put Israel back on offense and it has created, I think, a dynamic where, with God's help, they will undoubtedly prevail, is because they see the world behind them. And so I think to the extent that they see people praying for them, they see churches getting together and having, a salute to Israel nights, protect Israel nights, God protect Israel nights. I think that's enormously important, because I think just like the Biden visit, I think helped to shore up Israel's morale when they see all the people from all around the country who care so much about Israel. And I think many of your listeners, if not all of them, fall into that category. I think it means a lot. And the second thing I think is just to make sure that everyone speaks to their political representatives and makes it clear to them that it's in America's interest, overriding interest, for Israel to come out of this stronger and more secure than ever. Because not only is Israel provide deep, spiritual empowerment to all of us around the world, but it's a critical American ally. It's the forward base, if you will, that America has in the Middle East, in which it knows, under circumstances better than anything America could do, Israel is able to protect America from threats that emanate from this part of the world. They have an extraordinary visibility and technology, even if this past Saturday, or a week ago Saturday, it didn't look like Israel was on its best game. But I think that's something which has been self-corrected and will not happen again.
Well, Ambassador Friedman, thanks so much for joining with us, and you can be assured we stand with Israel, and we thank you for your service.
Well, thank you so much, and God bless all of you, and God bless your listeners.
Thank you very much.